The Trump administration wants this to be a get-in, get-out operation. But if Iran does successfully hit US assets, for example, its bases in the Middle East, potentially ships in the Straits of Hormuz, can those sorts of attacks go unanswered?
Well, Donald Trump himself has made very clear the warning that if the Iranians hit any American facilities, then America will respond with great force. And so that's the danger here, Nick, is that the various Shia militia in the Middle East do try to target some of those American bases that are relatively vulnerable, although they have security around them. They are in another country. They're often isolated. They're in places like Jordan, Syria, Iraq. And these militia, often the Americans don't know who they are, of course, who are the militants, because they don't wear uniforms. And so they are more vulnerable there to suicide bombings and that type of activity. And so I think that that's the danger, is if those Americans are targeted, then Donald Trump, I think, will respond and escalate that. And that's when America will get drawn back into yet another war, possibly another quagmire.
John, behind the scenes before this action took place, there were talks with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the Iranians on the nuclear future of Iran. And there was some sort of deal on the table 2 weeks ago that the US president referenced earlier last week. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, in fact, it was only a week ago where Donald Trump said that they were making progress on those talks, and that he said that he had warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu against attacking Iran, because Donald Trump said that could lead to a massive conflict. Clearly now we can see from all the available evidence that that was part of smoke and mirrors, that the Americans had been told at that very point that the Israelis were planning to begin this new war, and that was in a way clearly a way to get the Iranians to be lulled into a sense of security. And hence the Republican Guards and a lot of the senior commanders who the Israelis killed were not in their usual bunkers, or were not taking high security precautions. They were in fact in their apartment buildings that were hit. And in fact, the Iranians were on their way to Oman to meet Steve Witkoff to continue those talks. And the irony here is that what they were trying to achieve, what Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump were trying to achieve, was essentially the agreement that Barack Obama had got with the help of the Europeans when he was president, and Donald Trump had discarded and rejected and said it was a terrible thing, urged on by Israel. And so Israel has been against that agreement with Iran. Now, that was essentially to allow international inspectors in, and Donald Trump tore that up. So in a way, he was trying to come back to what had been done years before. Now all of that's off the table. So will bombing cause the Iranians to come back to the table? We don't know that yet.
And I guess with that in mind, John, do you think this could blow back on Donald Trump, given that he was the one who tore up the previous Iranian nuclear deal? Do you think we would have been I guess the international community would have been in a much stronger position, or at least have more confidence about what exactly Iran is doing with its nuclear program, had that deal remained in place?
Well, there's a lot of leaders in Europe who have experience in the Middle East, or are getting information from their own intelligence services. For example, Sir Keir Starmer in the UK, Emmanuel Macron in France, who believe that this approach of bombing Iran is not the way to go about it. They firmly believe that sitting down and negotiating is a much better solution. Now, those leaders are not saying that their intelligence services are wrong. One of the disturbing things of what's happened here in Washington in the last few days is Donald Trump has said that US intelligence is wrong on this. Tulsi Gabbard, his head of national intelligence, he said that she's wrong because she has said the Iranians were not planning a nuclear bomb, that was the information the American intelligence community was getting. So when the president discards that totally, that suggests that in a way, he's gone rogue when it comes to his own intelligence services. He's had to choose between backing the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu or backing his own intelligence organisation, and he's decided to back the Israeli Prime Minister.
One of the possible responses from Iran, as we've been hearing from our commentators throughout the day, John, is that Iran may pull out of the IAEA. Now, what sort of heft might that bring to this situation? And I guess a lot of it depends on how much of a nuclear program they still have left.
Well, that's right. I'm not sure in the current climate that would make too much difference. And there are some very hard questions for Iran to answer. Clearly, the international inspectors and the IAEA believe that Iran was not honouring the commitments it had made. Why has it enriched as much as 400 kilograms of uranium to a 60% enrichment level? If they're not interested in a nuclear bomb, if they're only interested in a civilian program, why have they done that? And the other question too is that why have they felt the need to build a nuclear enrichment facility so far underneath a mountain? There's other ways you can secure these. And so there are serious questions about Iran having this. So when they have the rhetoric of Ahmadinejad in the past saying we'll wipe Israel off the map, and they appear to be enriching uranium to high levels, it's understandable. I've lived in Israel for 6 years. It's understandable that Israel has a fear of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. From Iran's point of view, though, having been there last year with Four Corners, when they look at Israel, they see Israel bombing Gaza, they see Israel bombing Yemen, they see Israel bombing southern Lebanon, Beirut, Bekaa Valley, Syria, and they know that Israel is a nuclear power themselves, has nuclear weapons. So from their perspective, their view is that we're worried that at one point that Israel will bomb us. That was certainly the sentiment I got when I've been there last year, that we're worried one day Israel will bomb us and we have to defend ourselves. In fact, it's come true. Israel has bombed them.